restoring us back into that living, loving relationship with Him, He then goes on in Matthew chapter 28 to say, all authority, all that authority that the devil thought he took from me, all of that authority has been given back to me, Jesus says. Therefore, and what does He do? He turns and He delegates that authority back to us as men and as women, as disciples, as followers of Jesus, because He says this, He says, therefore, because I have all authority, I give this to you, go and make disciples of all nations. And friends, this is that cultural mandate. This is that mandate of stewardship that God originally planned in the Garden of Eden. This is coming full circle a few thousand years later, and God saying, right, now you have the tools to be able to do this, because even though you blew it the first time, you're not doing this in your own strength now. You're doing this in the power and the authority of Jesus Christ, who paid that ultimate price for you. And so Jesus Christ, what He has done is He has put us back into that place where we can act as true stewards of the kingdom, true stewards of the mandate that God originally intended for Adam and Eve, which we now can walk in. So, what is it that we are called to steward? And friends, it's very important, because we need to understand that stewardship is not relegated to one particular asset class. Stewardship, yes, it applies to money, but applies to so much more. Let me give you an example. In Matthew chapter 25, we read the parable of the talents. A master goes on a long journey. What does he do? He calls his servants, 3 of them. To one servant he gives 5 talents. To another servant he gives 2, and to the last servant he gives 1 talent. Each according to their ability. All right, so God gives different talents according to the ability. What does He then do? He then says, well, let's see how faithful you are going to be. Let's see what you are going to do with these talents, with these gifts, with these strengths that I've placed inside of you and at your disposal. And so what does Jesus do? Jesus says to them, well, the master says to them, go, be industrious, go and try things out, go and make them more productive. And we know the story. The guy with 5 comes back to the master when he eventually returns and says, Master, your 5, I've made another 5. What does the master say? Well done, good and faithful servant. Well done, good steward. You will now be a ruler of 5 cities. The 2 makes 2 more. Well done, you are the ruler of 2 cities. But the 1, what he had done was he had just said, look, I'm not interested in this talent. I don't care about this talent. I am not going to steward this talent. In fact, I'm just going to tie it up, bury it in the ground, and if the master wants it, he can have it back whenever he comes. And what does the master say? He says, you foolish, wicked, wicked servant. You refused to steward that which I'd given you. I'd given this to you because I knew that you could cope with this 1 talent, but you chose to despise that. And so friends, that is what God calls us to do. God is calling us to steward that which He has placed in our hands, those gifts, those talents, and those abilities that He's placed at our disposal. And friends, it's important to remember that talents open the door for us to do good things. I'm talking about works. I'm talking about stuff, okay? Now, if you've been a Christian for a few years like me, you get a bit skittish when you hear the word works, right? Because it's not meant to be about works. Well, you see, it's not meant to be about works when it comes to salvation, right? It's not meant to be about works, because that salvation is a free gift of grace. But Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, he says, for no one can lay any foundation other than the foundation already laid by Jesus Christ. So, what Paul says is this. He says, there's a foundation, only Jesus can lay it. That's a free gift of grace. Nobody can work to achieve that. That foundation is God's and God's alone. What we need to do is decide whether we're going to make that our foundation or not. And I urge you, if you have not made Jesus Christ your foundation, I urge you to do that. But then Paul says this in verse 12. He says, now, if anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, or costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, their work will be shown. Their work will be shown for what it is, because that day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire. He says the fire will test the quality of each man's work. If what has been built survives, the builder receives a reward. But if what has been built is burnt up, the builder will suffer loss. Paul's very clear here, friends. Paul is showing us that it is possible to build on the foundation of Christ in a way that's temporal, that which gets burnt up, or in a way that will resonate throughout eternity. We can build with temporal materials, wood, straw, and hay, or we can build with eternal materials. And those eternal materials the Bible calls gold, silver, and precious stones. How do we build with eternal materials? Well, let me give you a bit of a secret. What I've found in my life is that building with eternal materials, those works, doing those things that are going to resonate throughout eternity, is less about that one big decision, that's going to be groundbreaking, right? And it's more about those little decisions we make every day, every week, or every month. Let me give you an example. And excuse me, the wind is blowing these papers off my music stand, and so I need to bend down and pick them up every now and then. Let me give you a couple of examples that God has taken Belinda, my wife, and I through. It's time to upgrade the motor vehicle. Yes, we could buy X. Beautiful car. Or we could buy Y. And Y is 300,000 Rand cheaper. God, which one do you want us to drive? God says, I want you to drive Y. Because if you drive Y, there's an extra 300,000 Rand in your budget that I can then use. I can show you. I can reveal ways that you can use that to bless and sow into the lives of others. I want to give you more capacity in your budget so that you're not in a situation where people need help and you can't help. Let me give you another one. Domestic worker has young children. And so, and she works for us 5 days a week. How about this, Jane? We're going to keep paying you for 5 days a week, but we only want you to come in and work for 4. Because on that one day that you're off, we would like you to go and spend that day with your daughter. Because we don't want her growing up with that spirit of abandonment that just grips the lives of so many children in South Africa who grow up without parents. You see, friends, stewardship is a lot more than just money, although money comes into that equation as well.